I probably would have left it alone and continued my life without her, but it was his smirk that did it. He forced me to act with that grin, and whether she saw it or not, their complete disrespect tore my soul apart. It was obvious that Samantha, with whom I had lived for 6 years, would not be my wife for long. Part of the problem in our marriage was that I had been working too hard for the past 6 months. I was in line for a major promotion, and with it would have come a very significant increase in salary. This meant that Sam could quit her job, and we could start our family. The other problem was that Samantha was a beautiful woman, one of those stunning beauties who had never learned to be formidable when men flirted with her. She doesn't exactly flirt back, but she has a wonderful smile that sends the wrong signal. Since Sam is very similar to Scarlett Johansson, with the same beautiful face and gorgeous body, only taller, men naturally gravitate towards her. I had my suspicions for a while. She worked too late too often, and she had to go out of town more often. But the smirk on his face at their company's holiday party was irrefutable proof. I almost had to get Sam to invite me to this party, and now I knew why. Respect is an important thing in my family. By the way, my name is John Simon Selly. If you will give me a few minutes, I will give you just one example. In high school, I was the best player on the school team. It was at the beginning of the season, and we met with the team that had the best chance of keeping us out of the championship. The opposing pitcher threw a fastball right at my head. The ball flew past my face, but hit my helmet. I got up and ran first. I looked at the pitcher, and he gave me a grin and then mouthed softly, "Pussy." I rushed at him and surprised the shit out of him. Instead of playing like in most baseball fights, I punched him right in the nose, smashing it and pouring blood on his beautiful white uniform. After that, the real hell began. I was suspended pending a hearing on whether I would be permanently disqualified. My coach was pretty disgusted with me, but my old man agreed with me when he took me home. I saw what that asshole did, and I told myself, you can't let these clowns be disrespectful. Everything will go to waste after they find out that they have your balls. However, the coach's disapproval bothered me. He's been my coach for the last 3 years, and I wanted him to respect me. When I showed up at his office the next day, he gave me a lecture that I've never forgotten until now. What do you care what some scumbag tells you? You know where I grew up. At the intersection of State and 75th Street, where some thug was always trying to piss me off. I was lucky. Neither my mother nor my father would have tolerated any fights. It helped me stay on my way to college and get out of the slums. Now I live where I want to. I'm doing what I love, and these stupid bandits are either dead, or in jail, or living in a room with a needle in their hand. So here's the thing. If you play at my place again, there won't be any more fights, no matter the circumstances. As a result, I was disqualified for 3 games. Someone was looking out for me because Ron Mueller, the opponent's catcher, showed up at the hearing. He seemed disgusted by the way his coach was trying to win. Their coach ordered the pitcher to throw this ball with the intention of permanently disqualifying me. Ron didn't want to win the title that way and saved my ass. Ron eventually became a catcher on my college team and eventually best man at my wedding to Sam. Let's get back to the present. I could have handled it if Samantha had shown a little respect and just said, "It's over, and I'm leaving." I've been dumped before. However, not since college, and not from a woman who stood in front of hundreds of our friends and relatives and swore to love me forever. But I could handle it. Trust me. Ever since Sam chose her path, apparently by sleeping with her colleague Jacob Harris and coming home to give me a few seconds, I felt like one of those cartoon characters. My trainer on one shoulder whispers in my left ear, "Take the high road and leave," and my father on the other shoulder shouts in his right ear, "Crush them both, son." It didn't take me long or any secret espionage tricks to get the concrete evidence I needed. On Monday morning, after a party at her company, I quit my job, hired a divorce lawyer, and hired a private investigator. The first night that week, when Sam called me and said she was working late, I called the ex-police detective and he followed them to that asshole's townhouse. There are no photos of them actually making love, but I'm sure they didn't spend 2 hours in his townhouse analyzing spreadsheets. Everything was ready for Sam's next visit to his house. On Friday evening, she called me to tell me that she and a couple of women from the office were going to have a drink and dinner. Don't wait, John. It's been a while since I've had a bachelorette party. An hour after her call, I drove to the address the detective gave me and saw Sam's car parked in the driveway. I knocked on the door and was surprised when he opened the door, standing in his bathrobe with the same grin. Never mind, John. I have a black belt in karate. I'm not here to start anything, Jacob. Now she's yours, and the last thing I need is a lying, cheating fool as a wife. Tell Sam to come to the door so I can deliver these papers. I showed him an envelope made of thick paper. I called, Sam, go down the stairs. No need to hide. Sam came down the stairs in a bathrobe just like the assholes. I almost smiled. Sam, here are the divorce papers. Find yourself a lawyer and ask him or her to contact mine to negotiate a settlement. Don't come home tonight or any other time until tomorrow evening. By then, I'll have my things out of our apartment and you can come back. Sam took the envelope as if it were radioactive. John, my parents and my brother's family were supposed to come over for brunch tomorrow. What should I tell them if I'm not there? No problem, Sam. Just before I came here, I emailed your brother and gave him this address. I told him that you and Jacob would be hosting your family here, not in our apartment. I assume he will receive the message in time. If not, I will inform them about the change of venue when they arrive tomorrow. While I looked at Sam, she started to break down and cry, but then I saw it on her left hand and almost lost my temper. Sam, you didn't even have the decency to take off my grandmother's wedding ring when you were satisfying that bastard? Give it to me now. The ring you gave me is in the envelope with the divorce papers. Sam finally broke down, but still took the ring off her finger. I left without saying another word. I wasn't completely surprised when the doorbell rang at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. Perhaps her brother didn't receive my email in time after all. This is going to be awkward, I thought, looking out the window and seeing Sam's family on the porch. I had no idea how awkward it was until I opened the door. John, we're sorry. I got your email and talked to Sam. Can we come in and talk? For the next hour, her brother, mother, and father did everything they could to convince me that I should let Sam go home and give up the divorce. I think Sam went to her brother's house after I left her and Jacob. She confessed everything and asked them for help. Sam knew that I loved her mom and dad, especially since my parents moved to the Sunshine State after my dad retired. The three of them talked about counseling, forgiveness, pity, etc. I spent the next hour trying to convince them that this wasn't going to happen. No one was happy, and there were no smiles when they left. It took all my willpower not to hug my mother-in-law when she came out on the porch. She was crying, and I wanted to tell her that everything was fine, but it wasn't, and I didn't hug her. For the next few months, we danced against each other as usual, until the divorce became final. She wanted to talk, but I didn't. Her lawyer asked for advice. Mine said it would be a waste of time and money. The marriage was irretrievably ruined because of my wife's infidelity. A week before the divorce, I was invited to Ron's house for dinner. He knew more unpleasant details about why Sam and I broke up than I did, because his wife Jelly and Samantha still talked sometimes. I sat in his kitchen and watched his wife Jelly cook dinner. Jelly, as we all call her, was 7 months pregnant and just beaming. Ron saw me looking at her tummy and knew what I was thinking. John, let's go out on the porch and have a chat. I'll meet you there. I'm out of beer. I went to the refrigerator and put my arm around Jelly's waist on the way. He adores you, Jelly. Never cheat on him. Why would I do that, John? I love this man, and soon we will have a little boy. I'm not crazy. That's what I would have said about Samantha a year ago. Look at us now, 6 days after the divorce. Sam got stupid, John. I'm not nearly that dumb. Ron's not going to try to talk me out of this, is he? Go over there and listen to what he has to say. I'll tell you what I tell Sam every time she calls. I will support you both in any way I can, except by giving either of you my opinion on what you two should do. I kissed Jelly on the cheek and went outside. I handed Ron one of the cans of beer and waited. John, Sam wants to meet with you and talk before the divorce becomes final. She called me and asked me to invite you. This is not surprising. I thought about it a bit because it's not the first time she's asked. Why should I give her the pleasure of her repentance? All it will do is calm her down, and I'm not going to give her that. I wouldn't either, John. But let me ask you something. Do you have any unresolved questions that she can answer for you? If so, put it on her. Get answers to your questions first, and then do whatever you want. Come out, stay and listen to anything. So you didn't call me here to give her another chance?
No, yon.
I want only the best for you. If it's about the divorce, then I agree with you. I met Sam the night before our court hearing at a small cafe. We asked for a table in a quiet corner. Thanks for meeting me, John. Sam looked like she was about to burst into tears. It took all my willpower not to remember her little hands. I didn't give her a chance to start a discussion. Sam, I know you have something to tell me, but first I have a couple of questions. The waiter chose this moment to take our drink orders and start a conversation about the chef's signature dishes. I interrupted him as politely as I could, ordered a bottle of wine and a salad from the chef for two, and asked the waiter to please leave us alone as much as possible. He understood. Sam, my first question is why? I thought we had something special. We were special, John, but the reasons for my actions are all old cliches. We have been together and exceptional for 7 years. I was seduced by a handsome guy at work who complimented me on any occasion. You spent more and more time thinking about work or being at it. That's not fair, Sam. You know that I spent hours just to get a promotion. You wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I tried to make it possible. I know that, John. I knew that even then. But at that time, I was selfish and I wanted all this. Right now, I can't believe I screwed up so much. We were less than a year away from the birth of our children. I even had names. Tears were streaming from her eyes, and I was still struggling, not holding her hands. Good. I promised myself I wouldn't ask, but I have to know. Was he that much better in bed than I was?
Sam surprised me.
She started laughing through her tears. No, no, no. He was no match for making love. I've never had to pretend with you. Every time you shoved that fat salami inside me, I really liked it. I shouldn't tell you that. It can only make you angrier, but the only times he filled me up were the couple of times he shoved him inside me. He asked me to make love so many times that I began to think that he might love men. But in fact, it was only because that was when some friction arose. I'm sorry. I know I never let you do that to him. Don't worry, it's never been my hobby. Well, that's good, John, because your organ doesn't belong on the women's team. Sam didn't notice how the waiter came up behind her when she said that, and when he put the wine down, he took a moment to look at my lap and smiled as he left. Sam blushed like a beetroot, and we laughed together for the first time in 6 months. We're done with salads and wine. Sam spent time trying to get me to accept her apology, but I didn't give up. I told her that someday I could, but that it was too rude and too early. When we got up to leave, Sam dropped the last bomb on me. This is another reason for my actions. John, sometimes you can be like ice. Our marriage ends tomorrow, and you're like a statue. No tears, no screams. I cry myself to sleep every night. Did you really love me? Sam, I loved you more than you can imagine. But first, let's clarify a couple of things. You've mentioned your actions a few times tonight. Let's call it what it was. You cheated on me, Sam. You slept with another man when you were supposed to be faithful, abandoning everyone else. Secondly, whether I go home tonight and get drunk or cry is my business. Most likely, after our divorce tomorrow, you and the asshole will become a couple. He has already shown what he thinks of me by sleeping with my wife, ending my marriage and laughing at me all the while. If I cry now or tell you about my bad nights, you will definitely tell him one day. Then this arrogant jerk will have another laugh at my expense. Don't push me, Sam. You don't want to see the demon that lurks beneath the surface. I didn't go to court the next day. My lawyer took care of it. It was a modern, no fault of the guilty divorce with the division of property according to justice. The marriage had just broken up that day. Months have passed since the divorce. I used this time for planning. I did get a promotion at work and a big pay raise, but I had no one to spend it on. I probably spent too much time on the literotica site after Ron told me about it one night over drinks. Ron told me the ins and outs of the loving wives category and said that there are hundreds of stories in which an abandoned husband takes revenge on an ex and her lover. I read stories, take notes, and evaluate my favorite methods of revenge. The ideas that would have landed me in jail were rated pretty low. Psychological terror was rated quite highly. The rating changed after I had the misfortune to run into Jacob one afternoon. I didn't know it at the time, but after our divorce, Jacob and Sam started dating again and were now engaged. Jacob made it clear to me that he won. I lost. Sam was a fantastic giver that he couldn't get enough of. and I must have something wrong with my organ if Sam was so easy to get into bed with when we were married. Was I a coward because I turned around and left? I wasn't afraid of Mr. Blackbelt, but I just spent 2 years working my ass off to get this promotion, and any physical altercation would have thrown that half of my life down the drain. This guy has already ruined my personal life. Will he get satisfaction by ruining my work life too? I left. My method of reckoning came to me out of the blue. That's a funny thing about some guys. They can't resist dipping a pin into the company's inkwell. Jacob was no exception. Sam wasn't the first woman from their group he'd dated. One day I got a call from Helen Smith, a woman I met at one of the corporate parties. She wanted to meet me for dinner, with her treats. Jacob and Helen were getting serious, as it seemed to her, when he suddenly began to treat her as an illness. Jacob left Helen when he decided to stalk my wife. The relationship between Jacob and Helen heated up again while Sam was fighting our divorce, but immediately turned cold when the divorce took place and Jacob and Sam became a couple again. Helen was furious, and there is no rage in hell like that from a despised woman. How could you let Jacob steal your wife without even sobbing? I was at that holiday party last December and saw how Jacob behaved. I was still in love with Jacob and hoped that you would fight for your wife. You didn't do anything. Are you ignorant or just a weakling? This dinner invitation was Helen's attempt to give me some backbone. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my drink, and thought about how I would respond to her challenge. Helen, I'm sorry, I don't know you. I do not know how much I can trust you. At the moment, the amount of trust is limited. But I can tell you that I'm not a wimp and that someday there will be consequences. Have you ever heard the saying, revenge is a dish best served cold? Helen looked at me. Damn, I didn't think of that. Are you Sicilian? That's right. And if you're really interested in some kind of revenge, then just sit still for a while, and one day I'll call you and ask for a favor. Nothing illegal, but very important. I returned home that evening and my ideas began to clear up. But could I trust Helen to keep her mouth shut? I secretly made inquiries with someone I could trust, and he confirmed Helen's story. Helen and Jacob were dating, and their breakup coincided with the opening of Sam and Jacob's relationship. While we were talking, my source apologized for missing the first date and not warning me in advance. He kindly informed that the company's senior management was tired of the romantic trauma associated with Jacob's affairs, was in the process of rewriting corporate policy regarding workplace affairs, and that Jacob was rumored to be skating on very thin ice. During my separation and for 2 months after the divorce, I hired an escort for my attractive and social release. Cindy Fox, I assume her professional name, and I would go to dinner or a show every 2 to 3 weeks and end up making love in bed for a couple of hours before she went home. It cost me a tidy sum, but as I said, I had nowhere else to spend my increased salary after the promotion. It was the first time I had paid for a bed, at least directly, but I didn't want to tempt myself into resuming a relationship. So Cindy became my assistant whenever I felt like it. She has also become an integral part of my plans. I called Helen and told her that if she agreed, she only had 2 tasks. First, give me Samantha's schedule for when she's out of town on business. Secondly, at the right moment, approach Jacob and ask him to meet her in a public place to get it over with. Helen called me the next day. Sam was supposed to leave town in 2 weeks for 3 days and nights. Helen contacted Jacob and arranged to meet him on the first night of Sam's trip at a bar, just for a drink and a chat. But I'm sure Jacob thought he might be meeting Helen for the last time. Cindy laughed when I explained the first part of my plan, but I really shocked her when I outlined the second part. Cindy, have any of the women who do what you do ever had a social illness? I'm not talking about deadly things. I'm talking about curable things like gonorrhea. Of course it happens, but rarely. Most girls insist on elastic bands. I know a couple who make love without a rubber band, but they try to be careful and charge double for this privilege. There were a couple of such girls who had to be treated. Will you do me a favor, please? Let me know when one of the girls has something to add. I'll pay her for making love without a rubber band, and I'll pay you the same as for the search. You're kidding, right? Do you want to give this guy something? Nothing fatal, just something to ruin his wedding night. Everything was ready for the first part. Cindy told me the details later that evening. She was sitting at the bar sipping a cocktail when Jacob came in and sat next to her. They exchanged smiles, and Jacob ordered a scotch. Cindy was dressed in a casual business suit and looked very professional, not so professional. Almost immediately, Jacob's cell phone rang. Of course, Helen, I understand. I hope your mom gets better. Jacob hung up the phone and immediately turned to Cindy. Hi, I just got dumped because my girlfriend's mom got sick. Can I buy you some more? Cindy smiled broadly at Jacob. Sure, I can handle two, but don't try to get me drunk. I've been on the road for 2 weeks and haven't seen my husband in those 2 weeks. The girl starts to get turned on. Cindy flashed the engagement ring I bought at the pawn shop for the occasion. It was like waving a red cape in front of a bull. Jacob took the bait. My name is Jacob, nice to meet you. And they drank and chatted for half an hour. Cindy actually drank her third glass and tried her best to seem a little tipsy. Before she finished her third drink, Jacob tried his best to seduce her. Light touches on her arm and leg, charming conversation with enough sexual innuendos to try to warm her up. Cindy told me it was hard not to laugh at all the work he put into it, considering she was being paid. Finally, she got tired of seducing. She finished her cocktail and invited him to come up to her room. Jacob and Cindy slept in her room twice. Of course, Jacob didn't know that the entire event was being photographed. Cindy kicked him out, saying she needed to come to her senses and get some sleep, but not before she got his mobile number. Then she and I looked at the photos on my laptop. I promised that all pictures in which she could be identified would be erased before the camera or memory card left the room. Even after deleting half of the photos, we still had several dozen of Jacob satisfying this stranger. There was still a month left before the wedding, and I hoped that we would be lucky before the end of the month. 2 weeks later, Cindy called me with the news. One of the girls has gonorrhea. I only found out about it because she asked me and another girl to cover for her while she was taking her medicine. Did you tell her about my request? Briefly. She is ready to talk. But keep in mind that she is a professional and will probably charge you double because she thinks it will be difficult for you to find a replacement. What about your bed? Is it changing? No, I guess we made a deal, and you always take good care of me. And it's true, because I always left her an extra tip. So Cindy and I met with this young lady, she insists on not naming names, and worked out the details for the second part. It's going to cost me a few thousand, but it's worth it. Cindy calls Jacob the next day. Hi Jacob, darling. This isn't from the Hyatt Hotel. Do you remember me? How could I forget? Are you in town? Yes, I was wondering if you were ready to make the love of your life. Pretty cocky. We had a lot of fun that night, but what are you willing to do to make it my whole life? I'm here at the Hyatt Hotel with a colleague. She's wild, and after what I told her, she thought you could handle both of us tonight. Can you handle it? Of course, Jacob's self-esteem made him believe that two women would want to satisfy him. I just need to make a quick phone call, and I'll be in the lobby. Not in the lobby. Just go up to room 449. We'll be here. Bring some capital. Chilled. When Jacob arrived in room 449, our mystery girl was there, but Cindy wasn't. Where's Anne? He asked, and got a call from home. Her son fell ill, and she returned to her room, introducing her husband to the daily routine. She said it was his first time dealing with a sick child. But you and I can start. And they did it. Cindy never showed up, but our mysterious girl did her best to make Jacob forget about making love in a threesome. After he left at 10, she met us at a local cafe and took the rest that I owed her. I admit I felt like shit doing this to a guy, but he's such an ass that by the time he left, I was almost calmed down. She took the envelope and walked out the door. Cindy looked at me and shrugged her shoulders. I told you she was a professional. You paid me for the night. Do you want to go to your place and sleep with me? I wanted to, and we went. I waited a week after the wedding and finished my project. Both Sam and her company received envelopes with fake return addresses in the mail. Both envelopes contained a short letter and a set of photographs. Sam's letter said, Dear Mrs. Harris, sorry to break the bad news, but it looks like your husband and my wife were dating when she was in your city. A private investigator hired to obtain evidence provided me with these photographs. I have included only those that depict his face so that you have no doubt that it is him. I wasn't going to tell you, except that I just got a message from my doctor that she infected me with a social illness. You may want to get tested. Signed, the future ex-husband of a woman of easy virtue of your husband. The letter to the CEO stated, "Dear Sir, I just thought you should know what kind of person works for your company. According to my wife, he picked her up in a bar, got her drunk, and infected her with a social disease. I don't know if this letter will reach you and if you care, but I would watch this scumbag. It seems he has no morals." Signature: one regretful husband. Everything quickly fell into place. Sam's family got divorced, Jacob got fired, and there are rumors that they both took medications. It's helpful to have a friend at the county health department. I was pretty much doing what I was doing with my life. Sometimes I imagined the following scenarios. In one scenario, I beat the crap out of Jacob. In another, I pretend to go back to Sam, take her to a foreign country, and then leave her there without any cards, passport, etc. I could have done the same if it hadn't been for the vision of her mother and what it would do to her. I may have been so cruel to my ex-wife, but not to my ex-mother-in-law's daughter. But I quickly lost interest as my new job became more interesting and challenging. This continued until the next Simon Selly family picnic. Uncle Win, my father's older brother, was there. Uncle Win is tied up, if you know what I mean. He called me over, and we chatted quietly. "Johnny, tell me about your divorce. What happened?" "I like that girl." I told Uncle Win the Reader's Digest version of our breakup. "What did you do with it?" Then I explained what I had done to get revenge. "It's terrible, but it's not exactly scorched earth." "No, Uncle Vin. I did my best to put this behind me. I chose the high road." I explained to him why. "This is good, and these are good reasons. You know, that baseball coach really did you a good turn." Uncle Vin was neither more nor less of a fanatic when it came to racial issues, but he always found it funny that a black man from the slums of Chicago had the same impact on my life as my father. If you took after your hot-tempered dad, you wouldn't be the person you are today. Many times I had to comfort my younger brother. Otherwise, he would have ended up dead or in prison. Have you ever talked to Coach Price? Only a few times, and not since I was in my senior year of college. I kind of lost touch with him. You should look for him. He volunteers at the Boys and Girls Club in West Palmer. Let him know what he's done for you. It's nice for a man to hear that from time to time, but right now, go to your father, hug him, and tell him that you love him. He needs to hear it too. Uncle Win was a funny guy. I've heard that many people are afraid of him, but he always acted like a teddy bear around me. I actually went to Coach Price, and he convinced me to start volunteering at the club. I even started dating his niece, a beautiful woman, but that's another story, and it will need to be published in the romance section of Literotica. In other words, no drama, just love. And the last thing, on my 30th birthday, I received a greeting card from Uncle Vin. It simply read, "Happy birthday, nephew." No one is laughing at Simon Selly. It seems a certain Jacob Harris was found last night in an alley behind a bar he frequents. He was the victim of a robbery. Nothing life-threatening, but he had a broken nose, several fingers and ribs, as well as 2 severely swollen testicles. I guess his black belt must have stayed at home that night.